Michael Ryan is at Southview, Hungerford. He has sparked a police emergency after shooting dead a woman in Savernake Forest and attempting to murder a cashier at a petrol station. 2 neighbours have now also been shot dead as he walks up the street and fires at Ken Clements, walking his dog near the common, and PC Roger Brereton, the first police officer to attend the scene. He has now killed 5 people and injured 2 more. Alison Chapman and her mum have come to investigate the noises, mistaking the gunshots for scaffolding poles being dropped.
What's the police car doing there? What's going on? He's going to shoot us!
He was holding a gun across his chest. He was very stubbly, sort of unshaven, and he just looked really like, I don't know what the word is, not sort of brain dead, that's a bit exaggeration, but just really not quite there. He opened fire my side first. I remember putting my leg down and pulling it up and just said to Mum, "Oh my God, I've been shot," to which her response was, "Don't be stupid." And with that, he just opened fire on Mum's side of the car. When I glanced to her, and she's quite small, and her head was like twice the size of its normal size. She looked like she'd been pepper sprayed with blood. She had a cut to her neck and a cut right over her shoulder and was just pouring with blood. Then it went quiet. He'd obviously run out of bullets. And Mum just sort of put the car in reverse. Don't know how she managed to, and she just reversed back down Southview.
Across town, 21-year-old soldier Carl Harris has immediately been alerted by the noise. As a lance corporal in the army, he is all too aware of the distinct sound of firearms.
What was that?
Sounded like gunshots, proper gunshots. I'm going to take a look.
I had to go and get a part from a shop down in town. Just before I left, I could hear gunfire, and that's not, you know, that's quite usual around here. But I knew it was the wrong type of gunfire. I knew something was wrong, and I headed off down into the high street basically to see what was going on. And as I walked down the hill into the high street, somebody said that there was somebody out and they were shooting people.
It's now 1:20 p.m. and Carl, concerned that the gunshots are something sinister, hurries towards the high street to investigate. Remarkably, after both being shot by Michael Ryan, Alison Chapman and her mum are managing to drive to the doctor's clinic, almost a mile away.
I had wellies on because we were going up the field, and I could feel the blood running down my leg, and it was all going through my toes and all squelchy. And I didn't really know what to do with this piece of flesh on my hand, so I just sat there with it on my hand, and as if to say, well, what do I do with it? I didn't really think about myself at all, I don't think, at that time. I was only 16, it was all a bit surreal. I was much more concerned about my mum and if she was okay. I mean, I'd looked at her and just, I think that was one of the most awful things I ever saw as a 16-year-old child, to see your mum in that state. It just got me, and it's really emotional for me now. I don't think anybody really any further was aware what was going on, because we drove right across the high street.
In fact, a lot of people in town that day were completely unaware Michael Ryan was roaming the streets with his guns.
There were roadblocks on, and quite clearly every effort was being made to keep the general public away from where the scene. It transpired this gunman was on the loose.
It was amazing, really, because I was running down the street and people were just going about their daily business.
Even at the time, there was one of my friends was walking back to work, you know, and I was like, well, what are you doing, you know? Is there a gunman around? They didn't even know. They didn't have a clue what was going on. They said, oh, I only walked over, thought it was a traffic accident.
People were still about, but they were being cleared out, so there was been a sterile area made around the town centre. But there were still some people about.
Michael Ryan continues to roam the quiet streets as shoppers in the high street less than 900 yards away are oblivious to his actions. Walking down the road, he kills another neighbour, Abdul Khan. Ryan's mother, Dorothy, just returning home, tries to reason with him in the chaos. He kills her. He is now heading to the Memorial Gardens. 8 people are lying dead, with 8 more seriously wounded.
As we turned down into the croft, Mum said, "Where shall I park the car?" When I was 16 at the time, and I don't swear very often, and I certainly didn't back then, but my response was something like, "Just bloody stop the car." With that, we then crashed into the verge outside the doctor's surgery, which is there, there's a big tree. The brakes had gone on the car, so we just sort of came into land. One of the nurses then came out with the doctor, and that she helped me into the surgery. With sort of, I had my arm round her and we sort of limped in. But so I was taken into a different room then and just kept with the nurse, she was rubbing my leg constantly, obviously trying to keep the circulation going, and I was asking her questions like, how big's the hole? Because obviously it's in the bottom of my thigh and I couldn't see it, and she was sort of saying, well, that's sort of like saucer size, you know, and not to worry, we'll get you sorted out.
Okay.
As word gradually spreads of the danger in Hungerford, over at the hospital in Windsor, Sarah Britton and her colleagues are starting to receive the first casualties.
I very quickly gave a brief summary of my sort of immediate sort of past experience, so that my colleagues had some idea of what my level of professional sort of capability and skills were at that time.
The exit wound is always much larger than the entry wound, so when you're assessing your patients you need to look for a large exit wound. If there's anything
by then, the first ambulance, you could hear the ambulance actually approaching the hospital. Doors were opening, more people were coming into the department, remembering that we were having to get patients who were already in the department out, and clearing cubicles, etc. There wasn't time to think, it was just automatic mode and get on with the job. All we knew that there was an incident in Hungerford, and then somebody, I think, actually said there had been a shooting. But I think we probably all thought at that stage that it was just 1 or 2. Nobody had any understanding of the number of casualties that were about to come through the door.
As Sarah is tending to the patients, Alison and her mum are rushed to the Princess Margaret Hospital. Her mum has lost a lot of blood, and doctors are about to discover the severity of Alison's injuries.
I was taken out on a stretcher, and I was taken actually and just examined and had some x-rays. They just had a quick look and they actually stitched me up, put me in the side room and said that I could go home.
As Alison tries to cope with her injuries, her family are desperately trying to find out what has happened.
First I knew was my dad called, and he was terribly upset, and never really heard my dad upset particularly, and said that my sister and mum had been in a car accident. And I sort of realised straight away that he wasn't sort of coming forward with what was necessarily the whole story. I remember it being chaotic when we got down there. I remember being dropped off at the front of the hospital and trying to go into reception and find out what was happening.
Don't worry.
I think the first person that came in and told me anything was Dad, before any of the doctors turned up, and I just remember him breaking down and being really, really absolutely floored, and never seeing him like that, and then realising that it was a lot worse than I'd imagined, really.